Okay, good. I see a few of my friends who promised to be here as a moral support, so thank you. Okay, hi, my name is Minyoung Kim. I'm a marketing leader for OEM and custom font solutions and typography specialist at Japanese type foundry called Fontworks, Inc. And today I'm here to talk about a typographic guidelines on augmented reality, in other words, AR. But before we go in further, I would like to discuss briefly about why we started this project. I'm not sure if I'm going too fast. I prepped too much. Okay, so Fontworks was established 26 years ago in 1993. And at that time, internet was already there. And of course, PostScript fonts were already there. So we can say that Fontworks grew up within and together with IT. And our typefaces have highest share in screen-based media, such as TV, games, smartphone applications. So among various type foundries in Japan, we decided to make our philosophy to follow up to the latest technology as fast as we can and as accurate as we can be. I have to look my script because we had to submit the script and we have to follow it for the translator. Okay, so AR actually has been studied for a very long time, perhaps longer than PostScript fonts, but it was sensationally spread around 2009, 2008 through AR games and smartphone applications. And well, the famous one is Pokemon Go and Snapchat and Snow if you're from Korea or Japan. And Instagram has a similar function right now, and we should not forget, before all those came in, Macintosh Photo Booth had a similar AR camera thing. But legibility on AR technology has not been cared enough. I want to say nobody actually cares yet. So that's why we settled our mind on researching AR typography, so that when people realizes that actually, oh, it's hard to read on AR, we already have a lead, and possibly we can give guidelines for those occasions. And why AR and not VR or MR? I want to explain a little bit. Well, VR is a virtual reality. So as you know, everything on VR is virtual. So we cannot really measure the legibility on VR with the elements or facts we have for now. And as for MR, it's an interactive version of AR. So we wanted to start with AR first before we go into the further technology. So here we start. This is a easy slide because I already have a text, so I don't have to go back reading the script. We started our research from 2008 with University of Tokyo. And when we started our research, we first classified typographical field on AR in 3 ways. So the first is what is the information for? And the second is how is the information given? And the third is how does the environment affect? So I'm just going to show everything first and then explain it one by one. So I want to go from A, what is the information for? We divided into 2 cases for each classifications. And for the first classification, we have case 1, comprehension, and case 2, realization. So it seems like, what is it talking about? But it's actually very easy. For comprehension, well, the text is usually long length, like a manual or tutorial or article. So you know where the text will be, because usually with that much of length, it fills the screen or phone. So it's obvious where the text is. So because it has a longer length, readability will be affected rather than visibility. So the case for comprehension, we can say that it's similar to when you are reading a book, actually. And for realization case, for example, it's a menu or push notification or alert. So you don't know when or where it pops up. So you have to realize the text's existence. That's why it's called realization. And because it pops out and you have to realize it, you have to find it, visibility will be affected rather than readability. I'm just waiting for the translators. And for the second classification, we have text is fixed and text tracks your movement. It's a little bit confusing, but I'll try my best to explain well. For text is fixed case, so the text has a geographical pin information. So it stays in the exact position. So let's say you're playing Pokemon Go, if you ever played. So this is a screen, and here's you. This is a trainer. And there's a lot of Pokemons on the screen, right? Let's say here's Pikachu. There's Pikachu. But if you rotate your phone, because Pikachu's pin information is here, it disappears from the screen. So that's why it says it's fixed. It doesn't mean that it's fixed inside the screen. It's fixed in the actual environment. And the second case is on the contrary. The text tracks your movement. So even if you move your phone or your HoloLens, it comes along with your movement. So it's for example, it's like a menu or UI. So it always sticks in the certain position, say like a left bottom or something. And for the last classification, this one is easy. It's when the subject or user is still or moving. So for the still case, for example, when you're reading an article while sitting. And for the second, when subject is moving, for example, while you're reading an email while walking. I'm not suggesting that. I'm just saying. Or reading a signage while driving. Those kind of cases will be when the subject moves. So the experiment will be the mixed, all the mixed case with all these. So we started with this 2 experiment. We focused first on when the subject is still, because it's easier. And here we see we only used realization text. And the reason is because, as I said before, comprehension text will be affected by readability, and the environment is a little bit similar to when you're reading a book. So we wanted to focus on particular case on AR. So that's why we did realization text on fixed geographical pinpoint. So when you move the text disappears and you're still. And the second experiment is realization text that tracks, it moves along with you, and you're still. We used different method on each of the experiment. And for the first experiment, this is the content. So we used HoloLens, and the subject were 15 to 20 people, and 70% was male because most of the students were male. I'm not sexist. So for the first experiment, the two lines will appear, and the lines will have the same letters, but the typeface is different. So the subject will choose either one of them that feels more comfortable, and the result will be directly affected by the button. And for the second experiment, when the text tracked your movement, this is a little bit more complicated. So on the screen or on the HoloLens, the lines of random letters will appear. And on the top of them, there's a particular letter. So you have to find that letter within the random lines of letters. So the result will be reflected by how fast and accurate your answer was. And these are the typefaces we used. Obviously, we only used our fonts. And we used various kinds of fonts, so traditional, formal, modern, and serif, sans serif, rounded displays. And the names are in Japanese, but I think if you're not from Japan, will realize there's some of the typefaces are named UD on the top, and I would like to explain it briefly. It's a whole another thing, but we don't have time. UD is a kind of a new movement in Japanese typeseeing. It's a shortened name for universal design. So it's a movement that pursues higher legibility. And the measurement on what the higher legibility is differs among companies and type families. But usually, if you say UD font or UD type, it's more formal and cleaner, let's just say formal shape rather than traditional shape. So it has larger counter. And this was our expectation. So as I explained, UD types are formal and it has higher legibility. It was made for that. So we obviously thought these two will definitely be on the top. And for the second typeface, it's one of our flagship typeface and sans serif. So it's a more traditionally designed sans serif, but because it's one of our flagship, we thought maybe it could be in maybe top 5 or something. So result was this. Well, it might be harder for non-Japanese speaker to recognize the names, but do you see our expectation font was in the third, and rounded font, UD rounded font, is on the top. And for the second and fourth and fifth, it's all display typefaces. So it totally flipped our expectation. And the one I said, the flagship typeface, it's in the rest of the ones. So we don't know we don't even recognize where it is. Oh, it's here and there. So it wasn't famous. So rough sum up is, this is not the end, it's just sum up of the middle. The rough sum up is that traditional small countered fonts have bad reviews on this experiment, like these fonts. And you see heavy weighted fonts have tendency to be in the higher ranking. So we obviously can say that font weights clearly have some effects on the result. And also, as I said, display fonts have quite good reviews somehow. So obviously, it wasn't enough. It was just a first step to see how it is. So we continued our research, and we didn't have enough manpower, so we had new partner from University of Electro-Communications. I'm just going to shorten it UEC. And it's still ongoing research, so I'm just going to show you a sneak peek of our research. And that is comprehension text on comprehension text that tracks your movement and while you are moving. So this time, subject is moving, and the text tracks, and it's a longer text. These are the typefaces we used. You see it's different from before, and that's because we learned some lessons from last experiment that heavy-weighted fonts have effects on the results, so we didn't want to make too much difference on the typeface weight. And because we know if the counter is too small, it doesn't have a good review, so we extracted extremely small countered typefaces. This was our expectation. Well, we know these two were on top too, so well, we're sure it's going to be on top again. We're not going to make same mistakes. And this one was on top 3. So we figured, well, this will have a so-so review too again. This is the video we took. Let me see how it works. Ooh, it works. So this is what the subject is seeing with the HoloLens. It tracks your movement, so you're walking, so the text keeps, moving. And this time we did experiments with 10 or so people, and also again male 70%. And the text was 1.5 meters away. And the subject walks around the room and comes back and chooses the typeface that they felt more comfortable with. And we exchanged the typeface top and bottom because we wanted to know whether the position makes any difference. And we made sure that all the subject gets enough rest after 30 tests, because if you keep seeing a lot of letters, you're gonna be like, I don't know what I'm seeing, and it's I don't know how to say this in English, but it's Geshotaru to Hokai. So it's the shape decomposition. So we made sure to rest. And the result was this. Do you recognize this typeface that I said it had a bad review on previous experiment? But it was number 1 for this experiment. And for rounded and UD sans serif were the same. It had a good review, and this one also had a good review. So the top one was the only big difference we had on the latest experiment. And because it's still ongoing, we can't really say for sure, but right now, we're thinking maybe because the text was a comprehension text, it had a longer length, it was a 3-line letters, it was similar to paper-based typographical situation. So rather than visibility, we can say maybe readability was more affected. And that's why more traditional and humanist sans serif was preferred by the experiment subjects. This is what we have so far, but through these experiments, and as I don't know who introduced me before, I couldn't see it, back of the seat. Oh, hi, Dave, it was Dave, sorry. CJ Dunn has done such a fun job on AR specimen, and he showed me on Instagram. So I'm not a copycat. I'm just I'm saying I'm distributing this to CJ Dunn. We made something fun. So you can actually ask one of our staff to see this. We all have this app on our phone. There's a, oh wait, I can go back. So there were 3 different typefaces, right? And in the middle one was the highest review one. And the last part is just for fun. So there we go. So you can actually test by yourself which one feels more comfortable, or I'm trying not to use readability or visibility because it differs among the experiments, but which one you feel more comfortable with actual app. So if you have interest, please come and talk to one of the staff. And as I laid emphasis at the beginning of the talk, Fontworks cares and feels responsible to follow up and go ahead of the new technology among the type field. And we will keep researching on this, and hopefully we want to give complete guideline within a year or so. And who knows, maybe at that time we are already onto some new research about new technology. Thank you so much for listening.